Good morning and welcome to the free webinar on communication that is designed to help you become a peer counsellor. I'm going to share with you today a couple of secrets of the counsellors. It's really easy to use, but most people stumble on knowing how to use them. So you should all have a copy of the 3 perfect formulas for communication that therapists and counsellors use, or people in the human and community services. Today I'm going through those 3 formulas and some actual strategies that I use in a real situation with clients. But I'm going to embed it as though I'm talking to somebody who has told you that they've experienced domestic violence. The reason I'm doing that is because in Australia, just recently, we have had a disproportionate number of deaths of women and children at the hands of violent partners. This has got to stop. This is totally unacceptable. Australia is losing on average 1 woman a week to domestic violence. Now, this is not okay. So victims of domestic violence don't go immediately to a counsellor and to tell the counsellors about what's happening to them. They go to their friends. They go to you. So without having the skills of the counsellors, you don't know what to do. And I'm really afraid that people are going to say the wrong thing, or worse, say nothing. So today we're going through that. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of all of the countries that we are sitting upon. So I'm in Napranum, right at the top of Queensland, far north Queensland, right up the top. But I would like to begin by acknowledging and paying my respects to the many traditional custodians of the lands on which we are gathered on today. For Napranum, it is the Aneth people, but we want to pay respects to their elders, past, present, emerging, and acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people here today, and paying respects to your elders, past, present, and emerging, and for non-Indigenous people, to the elders, past, present, and emerging on the lands on which you guys are sitting. So let's begin so that we can end. Somebody has come to you and they are telling you about domestic violence. They've had a domestic violence situation in their life. What are you going to do? Are you going to leave it unchallenged and then go away and gossip or carry on about what they said to you? Or are you actually going to step into your power as a friend and teach them something new? You already have those 3 formulas, which is the formula of clear communication, I feel when you because, the formula of accountable communication, which is no hedging, no hiding, be civil and learn, teach. You also have a debriefing framework, and that's what we're going to begin with today. A debriefing framework has 5 different steps, but I'm also going to show you the cycle of violence and how to use accountable communication and the clear communication strategy in there. So let's begin so that we can end. Your friend comes to you and they are telling you about this terrible domestic violence stuff. It's just horrible. The partner has hit them, maybe hit the kids, maybe everybody's scared of the partner. The best thing that you can do for your friend is to go through a debrief. Now, a critical incident debrief is a very simple process. And it's about the person that you're talking to. It's not about you, it's about the other person. And that's the biggest mistakes that friends make. Friends always come back to themselves and their own information, their own stories. Good morning, Melanie. We've already started, so just bear with us, Mel. So they come back to their own stories all the time. That's not what a debrief is about. A debrief is about the other person. So the definition of a critical incident is any incident that threatens the psychological or physical safety of a person. So do you think that, just put your hand up because everybody's on mute. Do you think that a domestic violence incident might threaten the psychological safety of a victim? Yes or no? Yes for your hand up? Yep. Okay, so there you go. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 hands up, and mine's the 5th here. Yes, absolutely. How about the physical safety? Yeah. Domestic violence kills. One punch can kill. One hit can kill. One domestic violence incident has the power to put children at risk for the rest of their lives. This has got to stop. So let's go through an actual debrief. Now, a debrief has 5 stages. When I do debriefs, I either do it with an individual or I do it in a group, but the process is exactly the same. I either take the trusty old Australia Post whiteboard stuff with me, paper, what's it called, butcher paper, or a whiteboard. It depends on where it is, but you need to have something where you can record, because for your friend, there is a different process between talking and then when they see it externalized and it's more objective. If they're looking at it written down, it's very confronting and they usually walk away with that stuck in their head. So that's why we do the critical incident debrief. So critical incident debrief is made up of 5 different things. The first one is to gather the fact. The second one is to gather the feeling. The third step is to give symptom education. So just SE for symptom education. The fourth step is to do up a coping plan, so CP. And then the final step, and this is actually the most important step of all, is to do the follow-up. Now, because I'm from down under and I love to do things back to front, let's just look at this last one. Contemporary studies have shown again and again that for counsellors, it doesn't matter what therapy we use, what frameworks we use, if we don't do what we say that we are going to do, we undo everything. So therefore, the follow-up and doing what we say we do is actually the glue that holds our therapeutic frameworks together. So for you guys as friends, it doesn't matter how you do it or what you do, make sure that you do what you say you're going to do. That's the follow-up. All right, we'll come back to that, but we'll start with the fact. Now, would anybody like to be brave enough to pretend that you are telling me about a domestic violence situation? No, nobody's putting their hand up there. No, okay. Oh yeah, Paolo is pointing at Antonia saying she'll do it. You don't have to, Antonia, if you don't want to. It's okay. Okay, all right. So, Antonia, you told me about the domestic violence. Can we just look at the fact of the situation? What actually happened? I don't want any feeling, but what happened? Pretend that you're talking to the police doing a statement. What happened?
Okay. It hit me over the back of the head with a bottle.
Okay, fact. There is no feeling in that. She's not going, oh, that mongrel, I'm going to get him back. She's telling me the fact. Now, this is where we only stay with the fact. We separate the feeling because we need to teach our people, our friends, that fact and feeling and behavior are quite different. All right? So, bottle. I'm writing shorthand, obviously. Yeah. What happened then, Antonia?
He then tried to tell me that it was okay and it was my fault, and if I stopped doing the things that I'm doing, then it would be okay. Okay,
fact again. There is no feeling in there. Now, when I'm actually doing this for real, if Antonia put feeling in there, I would say, Antonia, could we just leave the feeling aside? We haven't got enough time and room for that feeling at the moment. We're going to come back to that. So you can become quite directive and prescriptive here and stop the feeling, hold the feeling aside. Right. So it was a threat.
Yeah, he said it was my fault.
Yeah. So threat and blame. Is there any other facts that you can think of that might be really important here? What else happened?
I'd upset him before he hit me with the bottle. I'd called him a name.
Okay, so is that fact? Did you call him a name?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I will tell you that if this was a real situation, I would immediately be using accountable communication here. And that's the formula of no hedging, no hiding, be civil and learn. Because I want to challenge what Antonia has just said. I can see that she's taking on the blame. She shouldn't have called him that name. However, this is a webinar and we're going to go into accountable communication very shortly. But I just want to let you know that that is something that I would challenge. Okay, thank you for that. If you think of any other facts as we're moving through this, could you just write them down on a piece of paper and we will come back and add them here. All right. Again, what I'm doing is I'm trying to train this person to separate fact and feeling. Does that make sense? All right. So now, Antonia, how did this whole situation leave you feeling?
Angry.
Angry. Any other feelings?
Scared.
Okay. I can only imagine that if it was me in that situation, that I would have had so many feelings boiling around in my stomach and in my head. Can you think of any others that might have been inside your body?
Sad.
Sad. Right, once again, because this is a webinar, we're going through this quickly, but I would spend a fair amount of time here trying to elicit all of the feelings. I would be looking at the victim's body language, and I would be making some educated guesses on, you know, if she's really uptight, I might actually say, were you uptight when you called him the name? I would refer back to the fact. When you called him the name, were you already uptight? Were you uptight when he was coming towards you with his fist or his hand or whatever it was? So I would be trying to elicit as many feelings from her as possible. Now, this anger is very important, and we're going to come back to this in a minute with the anger volcano. But before I move on, is there any other feelings that you can remember that you would like for us to write down here?
No.
No? Okay. Then can I tell you something about anger?
Yep.
All right. Do you know that anger is a secondary emotion, which means that wherever you feel anger, there's other emotions underneath it that push it up. And you did say over here that when you called him a name, and before he threw the bottle at you, he said that he was angry. He felt angry too. You made him angry. Listen, guys, none of us can make somebody else feel something. I can't make my husband feel angry or guilty or sad or elated. My husband chooses that himself. He can't do the same to me. I choose those feelings myself because I'm a big girl and I can manage my own emotions. So same with people who throw bottles. Throwing a bottle is not a feeling. Throwing a bottle is a behavior, but there's a feeling underneath it. So Antonia, I'm just going to show you about anger, and then we're coming back to this debrief. Right. So there's something called an anger volcano. And let me draw this volcano for you here. That's the C. And I know it's the C because, look, it's got a boat on it. There you go. Right, so that's the C. And this is a volcano because this is all the lava that comes out of the top. Now, this is very scientific, but stay with me. For a volcano to form, there has to be a whole heap of activity way down beneath the Earth's crust where nobody can see it. It's hidden. And the plates of the Earth rub together and it causes friction, and that friction then causes lots of swirling gas and rocks, and this is all of the scientific stuff now. Shit happens. All right, so way down deep below, there's all of this swirling shit, and it pushes all of that rocks and oil and water and steam, it all pushes up. So that's down here under the sea where nobody can see it, right? Scientists are very clever, so they're able to measure it. But we can't yet because we can't see it. And we've all tricked ourselves into thinking that if you can't see it, you can't measure it in our own bodies. That's wrong. We have feelings that we can measure that are way down deep inside our bellies. But we've been tricked into thinking, no, until it comes out, you can't really measure it. So down there, there's all of that swirling scientific shit that's happening. But when it pushes up enough that it pokes up above sea level, it then solidifies and people can begin to see it. The volcano is forming. And you can't see a volcano under the ocean. You can only see a volcano when it's a great big mountain, right? So there it is, all of that swirling stuff underneath has come to fruition and it is now visible to all of us. Right, so this is the primary process. This is a bit like school here. This is the primary process of the volcano. And now this one is the secondary process of the volcano. So here you are, everybody can see it, it's secondary. But then if this is not dealt with and the scientists don't stop it from exploding, it actually does explode and it spews its lava everywhere and it's ugly and it kills people, and everybody on the yacht here, they're over because the lava has spewed onto it, right? And it kills the fish, it kills the dolphin, it kills our way of life. Now this is called, and that's the tertiary process. So the Anger Volcano has three processes, a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary. And anger is exactly the same. Anger has three processes. Anger has a primary process that nobody sees. Anger has a secondary process that people see. And then anger has a tertiary process where anger spews itself onto other people and they get hurt. But the thing is, this is feeling, this is feeling, this is not. So when anger acts out and throws bottles, like over here, when it throws bottles, or it throws tantrums, or it spews its vile words all over people to hurt people, it's no longer feeling, it's behavior, it's action. But lots of people are confused when they act their anger out. They think that they're just letting other people know that they're angry. They're not. They're letting people know that they cannot control their behaviors, that they're immature people to be around and they're unsafe people to be around. I certainly don't like to be around people like that because it's scary, because it hurts people. I much prefer to hang out with people who understand that anger is a volcano and it's made up of three processes. So what I want you to do, Antonia, is to think of when you got really angry here, if anger is a secondary emotion, which it is, so this is anger here. So for anger to surface, there has to be a whole heap of primary emotions underneath it where nobody can see them and they push the anger up. Anger doesn't happen until it is solidified by the air, by people viewing it. There's other feelings underneath that push it up. What might those feelings have been? Now, just before you start, if you're going to say to me something like you felt pissed off is the same as anger. So any words that we would use to explain our anger are secondary emotions. When I went to boarding school, I had these mean old nuns, and I'm sure that they hated me. And they used to say, Megan Bayliss, you vex me. And I used to think, good, sister, my job is done. Hee-haw. But vex is a very old-fashioned word for anger. So there's a whole heap of angry words. So Antonia, think of the words that you would use to say that you're feeling angry, and I don't want to know about them because they're the secondary ones. I want to know about the primary emotions that have pushed your anger up. So can you name any of them?
Guilt. Guilty.
Okay, beautiful. Guilt. What else? There's never one, there's always a cluster.
Oh, you put me on the spot now, Megan. Hurt.
Hurt, yes.
Disappointed.
Beautiful. One more.
One more. Pain.
Pain. I felt pain. I don't think that's a feeling. I felt pained. But to feel pain is a physical thing. So from an emotional level, you'd say, I felt pained.
Pain.
Is that okay if I write that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's plenty. So the point here is that it's never one primary emotion, it's always a cluster of the primary emotions. And I will tell you that you cannot have anger without also having fear. The two go together. So every time somebody is saying, I feel angry, there's a component of fear there. So a great thing for us to do with our friends is to go through this to educate them. And what is our third part of the debrief? It is symptom education. So here, the symptoms are about feelings, and we're educating them about what feelings are. So there's feelings. Now this fear is very important because fear is an acronym. I feel fear, but if I want to put that into words, fear can be an acronym for false evidence appearing real, or face everything and rise. So some people will be so fearful that they run away. They don't realize that it's false evidence. They run from it. But other people, once they realize that it is false evidence, they will face it and rise. And to rise, you need to label to stable. To label to stable means you have to be able to say these feeling words out loud. And the best way to give these feelings a label and a voice, because if they don't have a voice, they're going up here to explosion, is to say the formula for clear communication, which is I feel, insert a feeling. When you insert the behavior, because insert your thinking. The best way to remember this is that it's a really simple ABC process. So A, B, C. It has to be said, the formula has to be said in this manner. A stands for affect, which is nothing more than a fancy word for feeling. What's the affect? What's the feeling? How does this affect you? Not effect you, but affect you. How does this impact you emotionally? So A, affect. B, behavior. C, cognitions. And cognitions is nothing more than a fancy word for your thinking. So to label to stable, you give your primary emotions a voice, which is I feel. You can change the tense here. You can change the verbiage slightly. So it might be I felt disappointed when he started yelling at me again. That's the behavior. Because now it's Antonia's thinking, because I'm sick of having to go through this. Does that make sense? I feel when you, because. But here's the thing. I'm going into the symptom education here. There are almost 3,000 feeling words in the English language. But typically as adults, we only use 6 feeling words in our entire vocabulary. How bad is that? And even worse, those 6 feeling words occur in extremes, like happy, sad, frustrated, pleased. We go for the extremes. We've forgotten that there is a whole heap of feeling degrees in between 2 words. So it's up to us to teach our friends about feelings, because if they don't know about feelings and all of the different words that there are, they can't actually label to stable. And when you can't label to stable, these feelings go to anger, but worse still is that anger, not dealt with, explodes and spews its lava everywhere. And when anger explodes, it's no longer a feeling, it's a behavior. Feelings don't get us into trouble, behavior does. Does that make sense? Okay, so going back to symptom education, when I'm talking to my friend, I'm going to tell them about what happens to their brain. And I will tell them that because I know about that. Friends might not know that information, but I'm going to tell them about the brain. At the front here, we have a brain that's really advanced. At the back, we have a really old brain, and the brain is called sometimes a reptilian brain, caveman brain, original brain, but it's this brain at the back that enables us to just act. So it might be that we see a mammoth coming towards us and we either choose to fight that mammoth because we want it for dinner for the next 200 years, or not you, Antonia, because you're vegan, aren't you? So you're not eating the mammoth, yes. So we could fight, we could flee from it, or we could just stay really, really still so that it doesn't see us and it just walks on by. There's 3 things that we will automatically do, and that is fight, flight, or freeze. And when that happens in domestic violence, it's this part of the brain that is operating and not this part. So for the perpetrator of the domestic violence, which part is he in? Is he in fight, flight, or freeze? Which one would he be? Fight? Fight. Yes, he's in fight. Yeah, absolutely. And what might the victim be in? Fight, flight, or freeze. What were you in, Antonia?
If they're in fight as well, that's when you end up, yeah.
Yeah, often they are in fight, yeah. And I know about myself, I'm a fighter. So I know that if somebody came to attack me, I'm attacking back because that's my natural default.
Yeah.
But I also am intelligent enough to know that that is behavior and that is not feeling. So my brain will take over and it will go fight. My husband will call me if there is a snake to be killed or a rat to be killed or even a toad to be picked up, because I'm the fighter. I have always been like that, but I choose the fights that I fight, and I do not believe in violence against people, against anything. Right? So my fighting is quite different, but the brain will automatically go to somewhere. Right, so fight, flight, or freeze. I'll just put fight, flight, or freeze. So that's part of the symptom education. It's also important here not to drink any more than you normally will. And that means coffee, alcohol, milk, water. Don't be changing anything too drastically, because at this stage, the brain needs to settle. This ancient brain needs to just settle down to allow this, the advanced brain, the higher thinking brain, to come back so that you can make proper decisions about what you want to do. Now, many people will run at this stage. They flee. And then they realize they've actually made the wrong decision. They should have stayed and done something different. Some people freeze, and freezing at this stage can actually be quite helpful because it enables you to think. You stay where you are and you think about what it is that you need to do and who you need to call in to help. Now, let me show you what happens. So this is the Anger Volcano. I'm now going to show you the cycle of violence to explain what happens. So we're going to start with the explosion. There's been a hell of an explosion in Antonia's house. She was sitting at the table, the kids were beside her just playing, and she heard her partner drive in. And she knew by the way that car drove in the driveway that she was in trouble because it was a little bit too fast. He slammed the door a little bit too quick. He stomped up the stairs and she knew that she was in trouble. She was already on tenterhooks. So he comes in, he looks around, doesn't bother saying hello to the kids or to her, just says, "What's for dinner, you bitch?" So she goes to the stove and she puts his dinner on the plate and she comes over really close to him and she drops the plate on the table. It was only like an inch above the table, but she drops it. And he explodes, absolutely explodes. The only thing that's in front of him that he could grab is a bottle. So thank God it was a bottle, not a knife. But he grabbed the bottle and he hurled the bottle at her and hit her on the head with the bottle. So she starts crying immediately. And the kids, they run to her, "Mummy, Mummy," and they're saying to their daddy, "Daddy, don't hurt my mummy." And Daddy yells at them, "Back off, you kids! Get inside! This is none of your business! Where's the respect for a man like me?" And the kids are hanging on to each other, crying, and Mummy's trying to comfort the kids as well. And he looks at everybody and he says something along the lines of, "Mob of maggots! What's a man to do?" And off he storms. He gets in the car and he drives off. So she's sitting there crying. And the kids are with her. Nobody says anything. They're just all trying to comfort each other. So that's the explosion. Then he goes off. Typically the men will go, and if it's a male perpetrator, and domestic violence is a gendered crime. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to refer to the perpetrator as he, but I also acknowledge that some women are domestic violence perpetrators. So I'm not excusing that, but just to make it easy, it's going to be a he because we've got a husband and wife situation that we're talking about here. So he goes off and he seeks the anger of other men. He might go to the pub and he might tell his version of the story to other men at the pub, and they all start telling their stories, and it keeps the anger elevated. Now, anger cannot stay elevated for more than 4 hours, and that's why police have programs about walk away, cool down, and they take the perpetrator away for 4 hours, because physiologically then the anger has to start subsiding. But nowadays we have lots of drugs, lots of chemical drugs that keep the anger elevated for longer, right? So if there's no alcohol or no drugs involved, physiologically that anger stays high for the 4 hours. So away he goes to the pub. After 4 hours, he begins to feel like a real heel. Oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? And he's got to go home because he needs to sleep off the grog now. So he's got to go home and he's got to face what he did, and he feels really, really bad. So he's extremely remorseful. So he goes home. The remorse is genuine. "I'm so sorry. I don't know why you put up with me. I don't know what I have to do. I don't know what overcame me. I love you. You are the best wife in the world and the best kids. Come here, guys." And they're all having this great big group hug. Now, she's still really angry at him, but she likes that she's getting some remorse here. So she plays along with it, but she's also giving him the cold shoulder. So she might be stiff in her arms. Her behavior is saying that she's stiff, but her heart is going, "I love you too. Oh yes, thank you. Thank you for hugging me. Thank you for saying sorry to me. I really like this." And the kids are wary, but the kids are liking that they're getting some attention as well. So it's the start of something better. All right? So now, the next stage is called the pursuit stage, where he is so adamant that he wants to make amends because he really is remorseful, that he says to her something along the lines of, "You know what? we're going to go out to dinner once a week. I'm going to make sure that I don't work the hours that I've been working. We're going to go out to dinner. We're going to go to the beach once a week as well as a family, and we're going to have picnics, and I'm going to take the kids fishing, and you can sit under the trees and, you know, paint your tails or nails or read magazines or, you know, whatever you want to do, darling. You can do that, and I'll look after the kids. So in her head, she's thinking, this is fantastic. I knew if I hung on for long enough that things would get better. Now, psychologically, this is not even conscious, but psychologically, we are all driven to be with other people. We want to have good relationships. So she's filled with absolute glee. I knew I could change him. Oh, this is what I wanted, and this is why I stay with him. I love this man. So next bit is honeymoon. This is a wonderful period to be in. This one is my favorite because in the honeymoon, any promises that might have been made in pursuit actually get kept. So if he says, I'm going to work less hours and I'm going to take you to the beach once a week, we'll go out to dinner once a week, that actually gets kept. He's even said to her, you know what? I'm going to go to counselling to sort myself out. And during honeymoon, he actually rings up a counsellor and he makes an appointment. He might not keep that appointment, but at least he's made it, right? So this is a wonderful, wonderful period. But it takes a lot of psychological energy to keep this up. So before too long, things begin to get back to normal. But I really do not like it to be called normal because it is not normal behaviour to hurt other people. It's unacceptable behaviour. So I call it habitual. This is the habitual stage where there begins to be little slips. And the slip could be the kids have saved up their pocket money for the last 3 weeks to buy lures because they love going fishing with their dad. It is the best thing since sliced bread. So they've saved up their money. Now, dad's been having to work longer hours to be able to have Sundays off. So the kids were in bed asleep last night before dad even got home. At 5 o'clock in the morning when the kids wake up, they're so excited. They want to show dad these lures. So they run into the bedroom, open the door, they jump on the end of the bed. Dad, look what we got, look what we bought. We're going to catch a trout with this one or maybe barramundi. And dad cracks it. Get out of my room. Oh, can't a man have a bit of privacy? Get out, you bloody kids. And those poor kids are so upset. So they go back to their bedroom and I hate dad. Or one might be crying. Ah! And mum is lying in bed thinking, that was a bit rough. That was a little bit too much. But he's been so good lately, I'll just let that slide. So mum thinks that. Mum actually doesn't say it. She doesn't articulate it because she doesn't want to spoil what could still be a good day. So things carry on as normal. They get up and dad just doesn't apologise for his behaviour because in his mind, he didn't do anything wrong. Those kids, they're the ones who came into the room without knocking. Like he had no clothes on. He could have had the sheets down. The kids could have, you know, seen what they shouldn't have seen. But, you know, he doesn't apologise to them. He blames them. It's your fault. You kids shouldn't have come in. You made me angry. You made me angry. And things are beginning to fall to pieces again. So mum is now in tension build-up. Mum didn't say anything to call him on his bad behaviour. Mum knows that things are getting bad again because dad is getting a bit snappy and he's getting really gaslighty towards her. So he's crazy making at the moment. He's beginning to blame her things, or he's saying things like, hey, doll, that dress used to look real nice on you, but, you know, maybe you should stop eating all that chocolate, eh? Really snickly little things. And he's really getting under her fingernails, but still she doesn't call him on that bad behaviour. She puts up with it. Eventually, mum is walking, and everybody else, the kids as well, walking on eggshells. And mum knows psychologically that the explosion is coming again. This is the most uncomfortable period of this cycle. So mum is putting up with it, but she's trying to make herself invisible. She's trying to do nothing wrong. It's almost like she's walking around the walls, sucking her guts in and trying to make herself as skinny and invisible as possible so that she doesn't upset dad. But what mum doesn't realize is that she's not just using her old brain, her reptilian brain at this stage. This advanced brain, this analytical brain is still engaged. And when these two get together, they do a little plan for what's about to happen. Mum is in this relationship because mum wants all of this good stuff, right? I don't think any of us have relationships just for violence. We have relationships because we want the good stuff. So psychologically, this part of the brain here, the analytical part, is telling the old part at the back that if we have another explosion, it's going to move us into all of the good stuff again. We just have to put up with the bad stuff to get the good stuff. So mum, subconsciously, when she's in this part here, the eggshells, she is now going to provoke the explosion so that she can get to the good stuff. So same thing happens. Dad comes home, she recognizes that he's in a bad mood by the sounds, by the way he walks, by the way he slams the door, even by the way he breathes. So mum will unconsciously provoke an explosion because after the explosion comes the good stuff. Now, this is a cycle of violence. It's not a circle. So that suggests that it keeps cycling. Early in a relationship, all of these rules of this game, and this is a really bad game, but the rules of the game might take 12 months to set. It could take 12 months for this cycle to complete itself. So we started an explosion. Right, so we've done it once and it took 12 months. The next time it cycles, it might take 10 months, then 8 months, then 6 months, because once the rules are set, the brain knows what's going to happen. Until eventually you have this cycle playing out on a daily basis. And when that happens, there is not enough time for the cycle to complete itself. So things begin to change. The first thing to change is the remorse. The remorse mutates. It becomes minimization first. And I have had blokes sit in front of me and they've said to me, but I didn't punch her, I only slapped her. So they minimize their own level of violence. Then the minimization changes to blame. And many women say, well, he used to say that if I didn't leave the sauce bottle on the table, he wouldn't have hit me with it. So he blames her for his own behavior. Or if she didn't smile at the butcher and say thank you in that stupid little voice that she gets, I wouldn't have had to touch her up when she got back in the car. Then the minimization disappears and it becomes blame. Oh, sorry, minimization, blame, we just did blame, denial. It now becomes denial. And again, I have had blokes sit in front of me and said, well, you weren't there. She actually did walk into a door, or she did fall down the steps. You weren't there, you don't know. And they say that to the police all the time too. They outright lie about their behavior because they are very invested in this cycle. That is what a relationship is for them. Then these go all together, honeymoon goes, normal habitual goes, until eventually we have a relationship that operates out of explosion, tension build-up, and eggshell. Now, I would never assume to know somebody well enough to tell them what I think that they should do. That is not what counsellors do. That is certainly not what friends should be doing either. We do not tell somebody else how to live their life. What we can do is use accountable communication, which is no hedging, no hiding, be civil and learn, teach. So this is where I would say to my friend, I would go through this as part of the symptom education around domestic violence. And then I would say to them, Antonia, this is domestic violence. So it's no hedging and no hiding. And I am very concerned for your safety. So no hedging, no hiding. I'm being very civil. I'm not blaming her in any way. But Antonia, many people have died recently in domestic violent relationships. No hedging, no hiding. I'm very civil. And learn or teach. So I have something to learn here, but I also have something to teach. Nobody can guarantee your safety. I wonder, is there anything that I can do that would support you? And she will then say to me, it's not really domestic violence. And I'm not going to argue with her because I'm being civil. I am just using accountable communication. And I'll go, that is really well documented. And for those of you who want to know the documentation, it's Dr. Lenore Walker, 1979. A lot of research has gone into this and there's different versions of it, but it is really well evidenced. So I'm very concerned, what can I do to help you? One thing that other people tell me that is helpful is for them to have a little bag of some money, their license, maybe photocopies of passports. Have a little safety bag somewhere just in case you do have to get away in a hurry. But I'm concerned enough about you that I'm going to be keeping an eye on you. And that's the follow-up session here. I am going to be following up. I'm keeping an eye on you. I'm ringing you every single day. I'm coming to visit, whatever. So I feel because is how you could break this cycle. This cycle here relies on behavior. If you think back to when things were getting habitual again, Mum thought, oh, that was a bit rough, but she didn't use her words. Our words are powerful. And when we articulate our feelings, it's extremely powerful. So, Antonia, again, I encourage you to use the formula for clear communication when you catch yourself in this cycle. So this is part of accountable communication here with the teach, learn, the end step. I'm going to teach you how to use the formula for clear communication. And when you're up here on eggshells, and if you catch yourself being invisible against the wall or walking on eggshells, that's when you can stop and say to him, hey, listen, I feel frightened when you drive in the driveway like that because it puts me on edge. That's the affect, behavior, and cognition. Now, he might laugh at you or he might still get angry, but what you have done is you have begin to break the cycle. You have begin to let him know that there is something that is changing in you. You're putting him on notice without putting yourself at great risk. You're going to get into trouble anyway because there's the explosion. My preference is that you would leave the relationship, but like I said, I don't know anybody well enough to be able to suggest that they do as I advise. It's up to you. So as friends, that's what we've got to do. We've got to support. We have to be non-judgmental, but at the same time using accountable communication, which is be civil, teach, learn. Learn for yourself. Learn why this woman might be staying there and teach something like this so that she can depart safely. Right, let's now go back to the formula for a debrief. Right, that came into symptom education. We're now going to do up a coping plan. Now, Antonia, how can I best help you cope? I know that you love him and I know that you want to stay. So how can I best help you to cope with this?
Calling me.
Calling you?
Call. Yeah.
Okay. How often would you like me to call you and at what time?
Once a week at 4 p.m. before he gets in from work.
Okay. Now, I've got your telephone number in my phone and I promise you that I will be calling you. But I also want to let you know that if ever you want to send the kids to me, all you have to do is ring me up and say, come and get the kids. And I will understand that as code for things are bad, there's about to be an explosion, I'll come and help. All right? So get the kids. Now, the next stage of the debrief is going to be the follow-up. So if I do not ring her at 4 p.m., she says weekly, so let's say it's a Friday. Friday at 4 p.m., I have just let her down. I have just subconsciously told her that I'm no different to the perpetrator in her life because I have also perpetrated a non-follow-up. It is very, very important, right? So I make sure that I do that. So I call 4 p.m. Friday. And there you go. A debrief is completed when you do the follow-up plan. So this formula for a debrief can be used for absolutely any critical incident, anything that threatens the psychological or the physical safety. The formula for clear communication and the formula for accountable communication can also be used in any situation. I have only used domestic violence because it is so topical in Australia at the moment. But this is a skill. These communication formulas are a skill, and skills can be learned and grown. We can get better and better at them, but you only get better at them when you actually use them. I've been doing this for almost 30 years, so it's second nature for me. But there was a time where when I first started doing debriefs, I had to have it written down on a piece of paper so that I knew what the steps were. I had to study symptom education before I went to do a debrief, so I knew how the brain worked. I knew what I needed to say. But I got better and better at it because I just kept doing it. And same with you guys. If you use the formula for clear communication, I feel when you use it in your everyday language. Use it for as many feelings as you can. You will get so good at it that it just becomes second nature. So down here in the volcano, where all the primary emotions are sitting, just like scientists can measure things that are underneath the sea when we can't see them, we can measure the feelings that are beginning to gather in our stomach or our arms or our head or our shoulders, wherever you feel things. You measure it by feeling what's going on in your body and asking yourself, what's going on here? What is this feeling? Butterflies in the stomach, what is that? Is that anxiety? And you label to stable. So I feel anxious when I am about to get on stage to do a talk, because what if my pants fall down? That did actually happen too. Yeah. Yes. So I'm speaking from experience. So you question and you label to stable. And the moment you give the emotions a voice, you are changing the power of emotion to turn into behavior. And it's the behavior that gets everybody into trouble. Does that make sense? All right, that is the end of it. We have gone through the clear communication formula, we've gone through the accountable communication formula, and we've gone through a debrief. We have done the anger volcano. We've talked about there being 3,000 feeling words, but typically any of us will only use 6 in our vocabulary. It is our job to increase our emotional vocabulary and to talk our emotions as a way to teach other people. I'm now going to open this to questions. Does anybody want to ask a question, make a comment before we end? Okay, so we've got people from the Pilbara are saying that's okay. Paul Martin, Mel, yep. Paolo's saying it's okay. Mel's okay. And all right, so there's no questions. Mel's got a question.
So what if someone starts getting really triggered and really upset when they're going through everything? So what's the best way to approach that? Would you stop and go back to it a little bit, or?
Excellent question. Very good. And this always happens. People do get triggered. So do people who are doing the debrief. They get triggered because we're all human. You know, we as the debriefer, we might have had domestic violence or whatever the situation is. So one thing is, for a debriefer, you do not go to do a debrief if you've still got issues. So when I was on the debriefing team, and we used to do the debriefs all over far north Queensland, we'd get called. If it was a debrief involving anything to do with children, I would never get called because I had 6 kids and they were all different ages. So they just wouldn't call me, right? Because my stuff might get in the way of dealing with a really upset mum and dad. Right? What do you do with them when they're upset? You examine their feelings. You go through the upset. We cannot afford to allow people to hide from what's happening. It has to be brought out into the open. So it's part of the job of the debriefer, for example, to sit with those feelings, right? So Mel, I notice that your eyes are beginning to fill with tears and your top lip is shaking and your arms are shaking. What's happening for you? Right, so I will unpack that very gently, very nicely, but I cannot unpack it until I understand feelings and I have feeling words to use. So the power in the I feel when you because is incredible. When I've run Founding Astounding, and Melanie is actually a graduate of the 2-day Founding Astounding course, people have written on their feedback forms that that is the formula that has changed their life, because it is so simple and it gives them a framework to talk about feelings, whereas before they couldn't. So there's one lady that I coach, and she, every week when I see her, she talks about the new things that she has discovered this week by using the formula for clearer communication and the formula for accountable communication. She is blown away by the results that she gets. You're not going to know what the results are until you start to use them. Right? It is very powerful. Now, cherubs, our power hour is up. We have got 4 minutes left. And unfortunately, the link didn't work for people to get in. So this is now coming out in the newsletter on Tuesday. So the replay I'm going to put onto social media, but for 24 hours only. As soon as it is finished doing whatever it does, buffeting or whatever it's called, you know, all those fancy tech names. Yes, you laugh, I don't know what it is, but as soon as it's done that, I will put it onto social media. So on Instagram, I am Coach Bayliss M, and on Facebook, I am PD Coach Bayliss, and PD stands for Personal and Professional Development, not personality disorder, just saying. So you can go there to watch the replay, or, Paolo, I see that, or sign up to the newsletter. And on the newsletter, I will send it out on Tuesday, and you can keep this and use it however you want. You can use it in training, you can use it with your work colleagues, with your friends, you can use it however you want. But also, I want everybody to know that I am available for supervisions, professional supervisions of people working in the human and community services. I'm also available for consultancies, and I am about to run out some new cubes of competence, compassion, different ways of working. So they're about to be launched. So keep an eye out for that. It's very, very exciting, some of the differences in it. I'm going to be doing online book clubs, online peer supervisions to bring people from all over the world together so that we can all be talking as peers and learning from each other. We will still have one-on-one supervisions, but there are so many more things that are going into a supervision package. And this is the most exciting thing for me. You are all going to have access to all of the resources that I use all the time. So my manuals, my coaching scripts, my ways of working, things like the Anger Volcano, scripts that you can use to drop things into for your clients. You get access to my entire library. So keep a lookout for that, and the best way to find out about it is on the newsletter. So really you need to get onto that weekly newsletter to have a bite of the cherry as soon as it's unveiled. Thank you all very much for attending. It was lovely to see you all, and I'll see you all again very soon.